Well, after a spontaneous decision last week, the guilt and shame of Gabriel's sins against the Jennings starts to weigh on him in another amazing episode. Hey guys, remember the Americans, Season 5, Episode 6, Crossbreed. I was definitely looking forward to this episode. You guys know I've really been enjoying the season as a whole. I don't want you guys to think I haven't been loving this season. It's just been a little slower than others, and I feel like they haven't done as much as the other seasons have. But I like that different approach, and especially the way that things left off last week. It really did seem like things were starting to kick into high gear, and this episode was so fucking good. I really did love this episode. So many big reveals in this episode, so many big scenes as well, particularly for Frank Langella. I know I always praise Matthew Reeves and Carrie Russell because they're amazing. I mean, they make this show in every way. But this was Frank Langella's episode in every way, definitely. I mean, he was just incredible in this episode. If you guys didn't, care about Gabriel, if you thought, Gabriel was, didn't have as many emotions as you thought he did. This episode really to show how versatile of an actor Frank Langella really is, and also how great of a character Gabriel really is. And I really did love this episode overall. Things are really starting to feel final, which it's understandable because we only have 18 episodes left of the show, which is crazy to think about. But let's just get into this episode because I definitely do want to talk about everything that went down. And immediately we get this great scene with Elizabeth. She's filling in Gabriel in on Stobert, and it turns out that he's not trying to starve Russia. He's trying to create a super grain to stop world hunger, we find out, which is obviously a lot better, and there's no reason for them to go after him. So she doesn't necessarily need him as her mark, but at the same time, she's kind of started things up, so it's kind of awkward. Then we'll get into that, though, but Gabriel doesn't want them to pull out of it. Instead, he actually wants them to stay on Stobert and Kemp and get photos of the greenhouse so that Russia can actually get their hands on the super grain. And yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, he does have connections, definitely. Even though he's on the right side of things, he definitely does have connections to what's going on. And Elizabeth should try to get as much information as possible, especially with something that is so, just something that it's so long-standing and it's so long-term and it's much more prevalent, and I think it's just a much more pressing issue than other things have been. I mean, yeah, she needs to do whatever she can to get as much intel as possible, but Gabriel brings up a really interesting line in this scene. There's one line that really does stick out in this scene when he's talking to Elizabeth, and she asks him, why he doesn't really want to get involved with this, and why he never really does anything with the mission. He basically says he's just getting too old, and he's just starting to get very tired, and that's a big thing about Gabriel. He's getting very old, very tired, and I suspect this will be his last season. I mean, the way things are going in this episode, this is probably going to be Gabriel's last season. It's sad to think about because I love Frank Langella on the show, but he's been on the show for 3 seasons now, and I feel like this is probably going to be the last we see of him. I'll talk about why at the end of this review, but this was a really great start. It really does kick things off perfectly and really does set the tone for how reflective and just how bittersweet of an episode this really is. And you can see Elizabeth in this scene, she really is wearing thin. I mean, here, she and Phil have been working double time, and they haven't as much time for Paige and Henry. Henry's starting to get suspicious, they got all this stuff going on with him now. Now they know he's into math, and he's good at it, and things like that, and it doesn't really seem like they're going to get much of a break, and she's obviously kind of upset about it, because she does want to have time for her kids, but, Gabriel's not really making it easy, and you can tell this is something that Gabriel, he doesn't want to have to do, but because of, Claudia's demands and him, going to Claudia for advice, she's very mission-oriented, as we know. She doesn't care as much about their emotional stability. She never has, I think. I mean, we know all the way back in season 1, she almost betrayed them, and that's why they've never really trusted her since then. But if there's one thing that Claudia's good at, it's putting them, on the right track, and trying to kind of be like, all right, we know you want to do this, but you have a mission to do first, and you can tell Gabriel is getting a bit tougher with that stuff, and, we also know that Phillip's not handling the fact they killed an innocent man in the greenhouse very well, and I thought that was definitely very interesting to see. Again, very well sets the tone for what the rest of this episode is going to be. So Elizabeth then heads home. She fills Phillip in on her meeting with Gabriel, and Elizabeth confesses to Phillip that she feels guilty about killing the guy in the lab too. And basically, again, because this was a completely innocent man. He had nothing to do with, with anything going on with the hunger, with the hunger and things like that. He was on the right side of things, and now they've killed someone who they probably could have used, as an ally. And but hence they need to stay on his A game. He can't stop now. They're too far into this mission for them to just stop. They just can't rework it. They want to, but they can't do that. And I thought that was definitely interesting to see. So we then see Misha. He returns to the Soviet Union on the plane that Gabriel put him on. And I didn't know if he was actually going to get on that plane. Like, I really didn't think that was going to go down. But Phillip has no idea that his long-lost son showed up in the States looking for him. So we don't really know where Misha's storyline is headed right now, exactly where he's going to go. But I suspect that this is not going to be the last we see of him, especially the way this episode turns out. I definitely don't think this can be the last, and I can definitely see how Phillip is starting to get some ideas of what's going on. But Stan and his partner are still tracking down possible Russian defectors, and they corner a woman named Mrs. Kovalenko at a park, and she's scared to speak to the FBI, which is understandable. I mean, we know how much, she's not KGB, obviously. This is a completely innocent woman, and she knows how much the FBI are against Russians right now, and how much of a hostile battle that really is, and really just how just how brutal things are there, and the kind of consequence of what could happen. I mean, obviously she's terrified. So Stan convinced her to think about it and promises they will take care of her and make sure her young son has a bright future in America. So we don't know exactly who he's talking about. I think it was definitely interesting to see. Basically, he's trying to appeal to this woman and make sure everything's gonna be great. And I do like the way Stan is trying to approach this stuff, but you don't really know if this is really gonna work. You don't know if he's actually getting through to them, and I'm interested in seeing what's gonna happen. So Elizabeth then heads back to Topeka, to Stobert's house, and again, it's kind of an awkward situation at this point, because she can't not leave him. I mean, they're too far into this relationship for her to just call it quits. That would not make any sense for her to do that. So she has to continue kind of acting like she enjoys, being a part of this, when we know deep down she really doesn't. But they spend most of the day in bed, and it's becoming pretty clear she's actually warming up to her Mark now that she knows he's not trying to starve Russia. And I think this actually provides a more interesting conflict, that maybe she might actually start to like this guy a bit, and she might actually start to think that he's, now that she knows he's on the right side of things. I think that's definitely what's going to end up happening. I think definitely we'll have to be we'll have to see what ends up going down there. I think that's definitely going to be very interesting. But basically, instead he could save that. She thinks that he could possibly save them, and Stobert can tell Elizabeth is stressed, so he makes her get out of bed so he can tell her, so he can teach her Tai Chi to relax. And I like their scenes together. I do. It's more fun now. There's more of like this warm tone to it now that we know this guy is actually on the right side of things. It actually seems like it's a good thing. But I don't know. I mean, this could potentially break up Phillip and Elizabeth for all. I don't know if it's actually going to do that, but I don't know. Things are getting kind of rough between them, and I'm interested in seeing really where this is going to go, because I think this is in a much more interesting position now that we know he's actually on the right side of things. He's no longer an enemy. He's more of an ally, but is he really a wanted ally? That's really the question. Like, does Phillip really want this guy in their life when he knows the kind of stuff that Elizabeth is doing? Does he really want to let him in on everything? Is he going to kind of become like a William, where he kind of just gets in the midst of it all? We don't really know. I think it's very interesting that we don't know what's going on here. I like that we have more, there's a lot of uncertainty as to what's going to happen with this character, and I think that makes this storyline all the more intriguing than it already was. So Gabriel then meets with Claudia, and he tells her that Misha's plane landed in Soviet Union, and Claudia's glad that they just dodged that bullet. Remember, Claudia said, don't get Phillip involved, leave the emotions out of it. He doesn't need to know. It has nothing to do with the mission, leave him focused on that. But Gabriel's feeling really guilty, obviously. I mean, remember, he has a lot more history with these two. He's been there for them a lot longer. This was their first handler, as we know. So he really feels like, he's really betrayed Phillip about, hiding Phillip's son and sending him back home. But Claudia reminds him that Phillip did lie to him about something, and that they've lied to him about things in the past. So obviously it's not really that big of a deal, but you can tell that guilt is really weighing on him. So a Mary Kay consultant named Nancy shows up at the Jennings doorstep, and Paige is thrilled by the woman, clearly wants to let her in, but Elizabeth snaps that they're not interested, shuts the door in the woman's face, and Paige is really taken aback by how rude her mother was to the saleswoman. And I think it's just because Elizabeth, she's just, she's kind of fed up with what's going on right now. She just took her aggression out on something, and again, you can tell Paige, she's really starting to question a lot of things, and Paige goes in a very interesting direction this episode, and I'm very interested in seeing what's going to happen there, because especially where I think they're taking her. But this is the first episode that doesn't involve Paige and Matthew. Like, we don't really have much going on in that storyline. Paige had stuff going on, but this is definitely the least involved she was in the season, which I was fine with. I think this season has been pretty Paige heavy, definitely. We've had a lot going on with Paige, and I'm fine with that. I think Holly Taylor's a great actress, but I kind of want a little bit more with her, but I was fine with what we got, I guess. But Elizabeth and Phillip have their hands full. They meet with Gabriel to discuss their other Mark, who is Morozovs' wife, who actually got a job teaching American CIA agents about Russia. And after their meeting, they're shocked when basically, they're talking about Morozov and what they need to do and how they need to handle this whole thing, and, how they need to keep track of her. Now they know they can actually trust this guy, and that they kind of have to rework this entire mission. Maybe they can use her to their advantage as well. But the biggest shock here comes in the next part, where Gabriel announces to them something that truly is earth-shattering and really could change up, fundamentally, the entire direction of this show. And I'm very interested in seeing what ends up happening there. He announces that he has decided to go home to Russia. Yeah, he's planning on leaving them. And he said it's not because of any certain personal reason. He just thinks he's getting too old and he just can't do it anymore. And he's worried about Phillip, but tells him he will miss them both terribly. And this is obviously because of the guilt. He can't possibly deal with the weight of what he did. I mean, this is not a small lie. This is not like, say, say there was some mark that was actually on their side and he wasn't. It's nothing small like that. This isn't something like, this is really how the mission is, this is actually how it is. It's not something like that. This is a much bigger deal, that Phillip did have this son that he has no idea came to look for him, and obviously Gabriel feels like he betrayed him, because he did very much betray him. He's always kind of seen Phillip as, he's always kind of like a fatherly figure to them, and that's something I've always really loved about Gabriel, is that his relation with Phillip and Elizabeth is much different than that of Claudia, how he's more of that fatherly figure and someone that they can depend on and talk to. He's sort of a therapist as well. He's a lot of things, and you can really tell that this is, him sending Misha on that plane was kind of the last straw, where he's realizing that I can't really do this anymore. I can't really keep doing things the way I've been continuing to do them. And I very much agree with that. I mean, what he's been doing is wrong, really. He completely lied to them. They have no idea what actually happened. Phillips was completely left out of the loop about it. So obviously that guilt is starting to weigh on him, and you can definitely tell how big of a change that really is to him. And that really does shake up a lot of this episode. And that really is when this episode really gets great, because a lot of this episode really is focused on trust issues, and there's really no one, I think, who has as much trust issues as Gabriel really does throughout this episode. So the next day, Elizabeth puts on a disguise. She heads to a psychiatrist's office, and she explains to Dr. Samel that a friend of her went to therapy and it helped her, so she wanted to give it a try. And while she's there, she scopes out his filing cabinets and what kind of locks that he has on them, because now she knows, again, they could possibly use them to their advantage, so she's trying to do what she can to see what he could have on them and things like that. I thought that was definitely interesting. I thought she was going to go for, like, her version of Est, because we know Philip's still going to Est, but that's not what it seems like it's going down here. But later, Phillip and Elizabeth sit down together, and Phillip immediately, he knows that there's more going on here. Like, he knows this is not just Gabriel retiring because he's getting old. He thinks that Gabriel's hiding something from them, and, Phillip's very smart to think that. He knows how Gabriel's worked before, and Phillip then stares off into space. He admits that he's been thinking about his childhood a lot lately and having flashbacks to these older kids back home, and that's really been shaking him to his core. And this has been going on since Season 4, as we know. I mean, the Season 4 premiere was him thinking back to past events, and Elizabeth thinks that Phillip should talk to Gabriel about it before he leaves, and he may be able to help him straighten out his past and what he does remember. But again, who knows if Gabriel's actually going to let him in on that stuff? I mean, it doesn't really seem like Gabriel wants to have a full-on conversation about this stuff. I mean, it kind of seems like Gabriel just kind of wants to be left out of the picture for a while, which you can't really blame him for. Again, he really feels like he betrayed them, and he doesn't really he can't look Phillip in the eye because of that, because of what he did. And I do like the way that Phillip is trying to finally seems to be getting some answers. I mean, this is something he's been going through for a long time now. He's been having these huge, flashbacks to his past and all these things that keep happening. And again, it very much makes me think that the show is foreshadowing them going back to Russia next year. I definitely think like that's where season 6 is going to take us. We're going to go back to Russia. Phillip is going to have to come back into terms with his past. It just seems inevitable. Why would they be setting all this up for us not to go back to Russia? It just kind of seems like that's what's going to happen. But I don't know. It just seems like that's where we're going here. But I do like the way that Phillip is trying to, get through Gabriel, that maybe he can just talk to him before he leaves. So meanwhile, we see Henry. He heads over to Stan's to have dinner with him, and this was more of those, fun Stan-Henry episodes where he fills Stan in on his schoolwork and being bumped into a bump to an honors class, plus a girl named Chris that he has been crushing on. I always like their scenes together. They're always fun to watch, and it's a nice detour from everything else going on. This can be a really dense show, and sometimes it's really hard to consume all at once. So I do like that sometimes they're just putting these fun scenes between Henry and Stan, but they're not just fun scenes. I mean, again, these two can relate to a lot of things because they are really the only two characters right now that are completely out of the loop. They have no idea, well, besides Adderholt, but Adderholt I don't really think, cares that much as Stan does, but they're completely left out of the loop. They know definitely something more is going down, between Phillip and Elizabeth. Stan is desperate to get answers. Henry is, Stan's, trying to track down this, Soviet couple. He doesn't realize that actually is his neighbors. While Henry, he's getting all these great grades in school, and he's realizing that Phillip and Elizabeth are never there. So you can really tell things are starting to add up, and it's really making me think that those two are eventually going to compare notes, and that's really how they're going to find out. I could honestly see these two finding out together, and I really think that's what the show is setting up. That what seems like just, fun friendship here, where, Henry is a nice bond with Stan, and Stan is just, kind of giving him all this great advice and things like that, and they just have a lot of fun time together. I think a lot of that fun time is going to become a lot more serious, and I think there's going to be a lot more like I said, I think they are definitely going to come together, and they're going to realize a lot of similarities between, the couple that Stan is tracking down, as well as Henry's parents. And I think the more that goes down, the more scenes we see of them, the more they're going to find out what's going on. One of them is definitely finding out this season. That's inevitable, and I really do love the way the show is setting up that very unfortunate reveal whenever that does happen. So we then get what essentially I think is the big climax of this episode, which is that conversation between Phillip and Gabriel, and there's a lot going on in this scene. Like I said, there's a lot that's weighing on Gabriel's mind, especially him not being able to look Phillip in the eye, and Phillip knowing that there's a lot of stuff that Gabriel's not telling him about, and they're really calm throughout the scene. That's something I've always loved about Gabriel as a character. He's never shouted, like, he's never really gotten angry. He always talks in the same voice, like this, and this very calm tone and things like that, but there's something so menacing and something so riveting about the way he talks like that, and that's something I really loved about this scene, is how calm these two really are, when in the back of their minds, they're kind of just, they're really angered with each other. Gabriel is angered with himself because he's withholding this knowledge from Phillip that Phillip should probably know about, and Phillip is angered at Gabriel because there's a lot of things that he knows that Gabriel knows about his past that he's not telling him, and he knows there's a reason why he's leaving, and he's just trying to get some answers out. So I love the way they're both kind of have their own way, this is kind of, investigating what's going on from both point of views. I think it was definitely interesting to see, but he obviously wants to talk about his father. Now, all he knows about his father was that he was a logger, and he has very few memories of him. And Gabriel confirms that Phillip's dad just worked at a logging camp, but he wasn't a logger. He was actually a guard at the penal camp, and Phillip wants to know if his father ever really killed anyone. But Gabriel insists that he has no idea, that he doesn't know if Phillip's father actually had something to do with that, and we know that's not true. Gabriel has said before that he does know a lot about Phillip's father, that he knows that Phillip's father, he was in a camp before, and that he worked hard labor, and that I'm pretty sure that he was killed, and he never actually knew Phillip's father, which isn't true. Again, he is lying to him, and unfortunately, Gabriel claims he doesn't have the answers that Phillip is looking for, and it's a very unfortunate scene. You're really hoping that Phillip is finally going to be able to just dive into everything. He's finally going to be able to get those answers that he really seeks, but unfortunately, it's just not working for him at all, and nothing seems to really be going in Phillip's favor, and you want it to, you really do. You want this to finally be that time where he can, he can trust Gabriel again, that he can get Gabriel back on his side, and he can actually, he can know that Gabriel is someone that he can trust, but at the same time, it seems that there's just a lot, there's just too much, that's going on between Gabriel. There's too many things he's hid from him, and at this point, there's just so much damage going on that I don't really know if Gabriel and Phil will ever have that same dynamic again. It really is unfortunate because this is really someone that I think he could have gone to, but because of everything, that basically, that Gabriel didn't tell him that, Phil's father actually did work in a Soviet prison camp. You can really tell that he really does feel guilty for a lot of what he's done, and I really, again, love the way that was portrayed here. And just, it's not even, it's not what said you. That's something that's great about the Americans, that they don't say things to you. It's always what they're emoting on their face. This is not a face of someone who is, telling the truth, and someone who is trying to hide things from Philip. This is a face of someone who feels really guilty and feels kind of, like Philip doesn't, he doesn't deserve giving this knowledge to Philip, and that he himself can't do that because he's already lied so much that he just can't make up for it. And I thought that was definitely interesting to see. But later that night we see Elizabeth, and I thought that scene definitely was very well portrayed. I really did love the way it was done. Like I said, there was so much leading up to that confrontation. It set up so much interesting stuff going forward, and I can't really wait to see how this changed their overall relationship in the rest of the season. So later that night, Elizabeth checks in on Paige in her bedroom. She's doing her homework and reading a book that Pastor Tim gave her about communism. And the book sparks a conversation about Elizabeth's homeland, and Paige has a lot of questions about how the society works. And it's understandable. I mean, back then, everyone was told, oh, communists, they are the enemies, and that they're working for the Russians, and the Russians are trying to bomb us, and they're trying to end us. I mean, you guys know this. I'm sure we've all been to history class. We all know the stories of what we've been told with communists. So Paige is very confused. On one hand, she's told they're the enemy, but her parents are the enemy. So she's very confused about how it actually works. And Elizabeth admits that they do have their problems, and that everybody is in it together. And that's very true. I mean, they're all there for one common goal, to, protect their country and try to preserve their homeland for as long as they can and stay in control and not let the CIA, the FBI interfere with that. That's really what's going on. That's something I've always loved about Elizabeth, is that she's always been the one that's so headstrong, the one that is so, country first, and that always takes principle over everything. I think that definitely, again, their scenes are really great too. But Phil then returns from meeting with Gabriel. Elizabeth finds him sitting in the garage, and Phil reveals what he learned about his dad. He worked at a prison camp, and it bothers Phil that he doesn't know anything about his parents at all. So again, I feel like this is setting up the end game, where Philip is going to track down his parents at some point, and we're going to get that big reveal, because he knows absolutely nothing about them, and I feel like definitely there's a lot of stuff that he's going to, definitely, there's a lot of stuff that Gabriel did not divulge in that I think definitely he's going to find out. But we do get some stuff with Oleg in this episode. Not a ton, but we did get some stuff here that's definitely very big, because we see in Russia, he's been hard at work busting a food ring. It's his job to make sure that foods from the farms are divided evenly among stores, orphanages, hospitals, etc., all that kind of stuff. But after a long day of work, he heads outside late at night for a walk, and this is really the big scene. It's not him working there, which, yeah, obviously, those scenes are kind of hard to watch. There's a lot of hard labor, but he takes out this paper that the CIA agents were trying to get information from him, and they gave to him. Remember, this was them trying to track him down, and he actually lights it on fire. So, yeah, he lights it on fire so that way he can stay out of it, and he burns the cassette tape of the recording of his and Stan's conversation, basically to erase evidence, basically so that way they won't come after him, so there's no reason why they should come after him. There's a lot of stuff that he's done wrong. This is him now burning evidence, and, he's tampered with it as best as he can, but I don't know if he's really going to get out of this as easily as he thinks he is. So I definitely feel very bad. I'm definitely worried about, how Oleg is going to be throughout the rest of the show, because I don't know if he's really going to be able to get out of this as easily as he thinks. But the way this episode ends is fantastic. I love the way this scene ended. That montage was great with Oleg, but it's really the ending here that is what is the most shocking, because we see the ending. Elizabeth and Philip are taking Paige somewhere. We don't know where they're taking her, but we see at the end of the episode they take her someplace that they haven't ever taken her before, and they've done something that they've tried to, get her to stay away from, but finally they feel like it's the time for her to do that, and they take her to the safe house to meet with Gabriel for the first time, and you can just see this look on his face of satisfaction, accomplishment, that maybe he'll finally be able to make up for all of those sins and all of the lies that he's told to Phillip and Elizabeth. Maybe this will finally make up for that by telling Paige the truth of what's actually going on, and she's finally gonna get those answers that she wants. They're also hopefully in turn gonna get those answers, and that is the way this episode ends. Really incredible stuff overall, but let's just get this episode and where I think the rest of, where I think we're gonna go from here. So, holy shit, I mean, what an episode this really was. I really did love this one overall. Let's talk about this ending, though, because there are a lot of places we can go now. First of all, we got Paige, someone who has been questioning them since really the beginning of Season 2. She's always had questions about what they're doing, whether it was her thinking that they were, that they were just spies, or that they were, possibly that they were killers, or something weird was going on with them. There was this confidential information that she didn't know about, and then her finally realizing what's going on with the KGB, still having questions. She's always had questions since then, because she's never really been let in on what's going on. They've tried to shelter her from that for as long as possible, but I think they're realizing that there's only so long that they can do that. Eventually, they need to let her in on what's going on, and she has so many questions, and she's shown an interest in pro-KGB that they might as well get her involved on what's going on. The way that this ends, I think, is just phenomenal. I don't know really what's going to happen here, but the way that this is really going to redeem Gabriel, I think that's really what his goal is here, that he wants to be able to redeem himself. He doesn't want to have to leave them. He obviously really cares about Phillip and Elizabeth, but because of all of the, because of the guilt and, all that comes with that, from everything that he's done from the beginning, he's never really, he hasn't always been honest with them, and I think he's really starting to, like I said, feel that guilt, and that's really starting to play a part in his decision making, and because of that, he just can't really look them in the same way. He is culpable for a lot of things, and I think he's hoping that by talking to Paige and finally giving her a sense of what's going on, that he's going to be able to let go of a lot of that, and, she'll get the answers. Maybe he'll let Phillip in about his father a little bit, so I'm really interested in seeing where this is going to go. I suspect a lot of the next episode is just going to be their conversation, and the Americans does that really, really well. I mean, remember that episode back in Season 3 with that, older woman who actually died in that episode? That was one of the most riveting episodes the show has done. So I really think that's where they can go. Typically, episode 7 of this show is usually a big episode. It usually is one of the most chaotic episodes of the season, so I expect a lot to go down in the next episode. As far as Oleg, though, I don't know what's going on with Oleg. I mean, clearly he's trying to run from the FBI. He's trying to make sure that he stays in Russia and that he can take care of his mother. I like that he's made this choice, but I don't know if this is really going to work in his favor. I mean, we know that Stan, he's protesting to keep him there for as long as possible. He's doing what he can to do that, but I don't know if this is really going to work out for Oleg. I don't really know what he's thinking here. I get what he's doing, obviously. He wants to stay on, with his family, and he wants to care for them for as long as he can, because he knows his mother's dying and things like that. But I don't really know if this is really going to work for him in the way he thinks it is. I think definitely this was not the best decision on his part, and I think definitely he's in a very risky position now, so I don't really know what's going to happen there. I'm very interested in seeing where this whole storyline ends up going. I've been very riveted in this since the beginning, so I definitely am looking forward to seeing what ends up going down there. The other big part of all this, though, is Stobert. Elizabeth and Stobert are in a very interesting relationship right now, because at first this was a relationship of convenience, where she did this to, get intel from him and find a way to, prove that he is the one that's responsible for everything, and then out him and try to figure out if, Alex was on the wrong side of things. But now it seems like that's not the case at all. Now it seems like they need to continue this mission, but just in a different way. And I don't know what exactly is going to happen there between Elizabeth and Stobert, because again, they're in a much different position now, and it seems like he's kind of helping her through a lot of this, and he's kind of giving her these calming sort of mechanisms. So I don't really know at this point. I'm interested in that relationship. I always have been, but I just don't know where that's going to go now. And I think I like that. I like that it's something different. That's something I love about the show, is that they do try to change up the dynamics. A lot of people say, oh, every season's the same, and I really would not say that. They really have changed things up here. Usually, this would be the mark. This would be the villain of the season. We don't know who that really is right now, and I like that. And honestly, I don't know if that needs to be revealed. I really don't know if we need to reveal who the actual, who the actual, who's actually, culpable and who actually is the one to blame for this food shortage. I don't know if we really need to reveal that, because I don't think that's really important to what's going on here. I think what's more important is for them to complete this mission and, for them to try to keep their cover for as long as possible. I think that is definitely what's more important here. And I also really do love the way they're setting up this end game here, especially with Stan and Henry, two people who are completely out of the loop on what's going on. They have no idea about, Stan has no idea that his neighbors, of course, since the beginning he's never noticed, but that his neighbors are KGB agents, and Henry has no idea what Phillip and Elizabeth have actually been up to. And I think definitely that's going to change very soon. One of them is going to find out, like, really, really soon. Like, I don't even know if it's going to be the end of the season. I could see it being maybe episode 10, episode 11. They're going to find out very soon, and it's going to have a big impact, and there's going to be a lot of repercussions for when that goes down. And I can't imagine what's going to happen. I mean, it's going to be one of the biggest reveals in television history. It really is. I mean, it's going to be... I've heard people say it's going to be equal to, like, when Hank found out what Walter White was up to. It's going to be equal to that. It's going to be a big moment. It's going to be something that we're going to talk about for years, and I really hope they don't fuck it up. Knowing the Americans, I doubt they will, but I am definitely interested in seeing how that's going to go, because that really is going to change everything. Overall, guys, I really do love this episode. The season is absolutely killing it. They're really doing a great job of planting those seeds for the end, but also giving us some really great deep character moments. And I really do love the way they're focusing on Phillip and that past between him, and Gabriel, and how Gabriel hasn't let him in on a lot of things. I mean, again, I really do think we're going to end up going to Russia either at the end of the season or at the beginning of next season. I think that's definitely going to go down at some point. But I really did love this episode overall, and I'm definitely giving The Americans Season 5, Episode 6, Crossbreed, a 4.75 out of 5, or an A. This is one of the best episodes of the season by far. I think this is right up there with the last episode. It gave us Frank Langella's best performance to date. I think this definitely was the best for him between all the guilt and all the insurmountable damage he has done between Phillip and Elizabeth and how he's going to try to correct that. It let us in on some great things for the end, i.e., that scene between Stan and Phillip, or where they're going with Oleg. I think they're really getting us to the end of that story. Definitely that's going to come to a close soon. And it also planted some stuff to set up for later in the show, like Misha, or what's going down, with Phillip's father thing. All this stuff was very well done here. It's one of the best episodes we've had this season so far, and I definitely mentioned seeing, where the rest of the season's going to go. It's officially hooked me in more than ever, and now I am very uncertain as where it's going to go, and that's something I always love about The Americans, how uncertain things are moving forward, and I really do hope that uncertainty continues to pay off throughout the seasons. That's something The Americans always nails. So overall, guys, for this episode of The Americans, let me know what you guys thought of this episode overall. Left your thoughts in it. I really did love this episode overall, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.